Well, ladies and gentlemen, many of you know this man. Some of you don't. He's got, I think, the biggest or one of the biggest shows in New York, the morning show on WABC. And I'll tell you why. Because he is, in his heart, a good man, because he's funny, but he can be serious, he's substantive, and he's my buddy. Sid Rosenberg, how are you?
How am I? This is a huge honor. I mean, to be on Mark Levin's radio show. And yes, we've got the number one show in New York in the morning. We're a monster, quite frankly, Mark, throughout the country. But to be on your show is a huge honor for me. So thank you so much.
Well, God bless you, brother. I want you to explain. You went to Israel recently, what you did there, what you saw there, and now you see that this regime in Washington, D.C. is turning on the Jews, turning on Israel, embracing Dearbornistan, Michigan. Now they're going to back a resolution against Israel in the United Nations. I mean, it's getting worse and worse and worse with Biden and Blinken, is it not?
It is, but entirely predictable. And I'm going to say this. It was just one day after those brutal attacks on October the 7th, and it was an early Sunday morning. It was a football Sunday. I was about to watch the Jets and the Giants, which I couldn't do because I was nauseous from watching the coverage from Israel. But I watched you that morning on Fox News, like I did last night. Your show was amazing with David Friedman. And you were the first to point out, Joe Biden had enriched Iran by loosening all those restrictions and sanctions. They're able to make billions and billions of dollars in oil from China, from Russia. Everybody else was still talking about the $6 billion that he gave to them the weeks before. And you said, wait a second, he doesn't even need to touch that, Iran, I should say. So you were all over this from the very beginning. This is no surprise. Look, Biden has now been a part of not one, but two administrations that hate our people. Dating back to his days with Obama, he was the VP. He was right there when Obama and Kerry, the architects of that Iran deal, he knew about the pallets of cash that creep Obama was sending to Palestinians at 4 o'clock in the morning. And then he wins, and he does the same thing all over again. I'm going to tell you this, Mark. The people here that are stupid in the United States, and there's a lot of them, a lot of my own people, Jewish people, the own worst enemy. In Israel, they're not buying it. Don't believe what you read here. The people on the streets that I met, while anecdotal, know the real deal. They know that while Biden go on TV and talk about being pro-Israel, at the same time, he calls Bibi Netanyahu an a-hole or an effing a-hole, and he gives money to Iran, and he constantly puts his foot on the neck of Israel. So he's not fooling those people in Israel, not in Jerusalem, not in Tel Aviv, maybe in Brooklyn, maybe in Virginia, but not there. He has been exposed as the creep you knew he was, and I knew he was.
So, Sid, you go over to Israel. You went to the site where that festival was being held, and tell me what you saw. Tell me what went through your mind and your heart.
I'm sorry, I get very choked up when I think about that day. But what I saw, Mark, was horrendous. Just imagine Woodstock, 1969. Just imagine Coachella, any one of the many, many concerts that our youngsters, I've got a 19-year-old daughter, go to in our country. And just imagine a bunch of beautiful kids dancing and having a great time. And then moments into the concert, men showing up with machine guns and RPGs and knives. And then they just killed these people at that concert, Mark. That would have been bad enough. They threw the girls to the ground, ripped their clothes off. 5 of them, 6 of them, raped them at a time, carved off their breasts. And eventually, when they were done with these beautiful young girls, they shot them in the head. So when you go there now, what you see is a bunch of sticks. And on the top of these sticks are 8x10s with their faces. And at the bottom of these sticks, you'll find yahrzeit candles. You'll find lighters. You'll find slippers, whatever they had with them that day. And I mean this, Mark. You'll never see more beautiful people. I don't know what it is about the Israeli people. I'm talking about physically pleasing. The men, the women, just beautiful people. Murdered, butchered, raped, humiliated in their prime. And that's what's left at the Nova Music Festival. So when you hear people in the streets that are marching with the Palestinians, shutting down our universities, blocking our bridges and tunnels, and sympathizing with Hamas, they should just make that trip and take a look. Because I swear, when I arrive there, you can hear the music in the background. It's that eerie. You can almost see the faces smiling and the kids dancing. And now they're left to 8x10s on a stick.
And Sid Rosenberg, it seemed like the outrage lasted for about a week. And then our media did what our media normally does, CNN and the rest, and that is they start moving towards Hamas's side, taking Hamas's propaganda, taking Hamas's casualty figures. The president did that last week. He brings in the phony king of the phony country of Jordan, which is really the Palestinian homeland, if there is such a thing. And, of course, his daddy slaughtered tens of thousands of them in what's called Black September 1970. Now, that said, you got a full-on diplomatic propaganda war being led by our State Department, being led out of the White House against Israel and the Jewish people. What do you make of this? I've never seen anything like this.
No, I haven't. And, you made this point. You've been making this point on your radio show and your TV show. And, again, I know I'm the guest tonight, but I got to give you the credit because...
Well, you're a sweetheart. Let me just tell everybody, Sid and I are pretty tight. I mean, very tight. We text, we talk, we used to go at it. We don't do that anymore.
No. And I'll tell you this before I get to my point about the diplomatic efforts here. After October the 7th, it was important to me that the big voices in our country, and not that I respect Jews more than anybody else. I don't. I'm a proud Jew, but I love everybody. But I really felt like the big Jewish voices, I needed them. I needed you, Mark Levin. That Sunday morning, October the 8th, we were in the middle of a fight. We had not been talking, but I needed you. And I reached out to Rich, Mr. Producer, and I said, I want to talk to Mark. And I have to tell you that throughout this whole ordeal, and it's been an ordeal, it's been tragic for me, even living in Queens, you, more than anybody in the media, have been a brother to me and have made these difficult times somewhat easier. And I'll never forget that.
I'm with Sid Rosenberg, my buddy. Sid, if they ever get hold of our text messages, they're going to think we're pretty weird. But nonetheless, we're not.
That's true. That's funny.
But that said, Sid is really a great guy. Let me ask you this question. You see what's going on in America, in our universities, in our streets, and so forth and so on. What do you think accounts for that with all this anti-Semitism? And why do you think Biden hasn't given a major speech, or his Department of Justice and Education Department are so passive about all this?
Because he doesn't care. And this goes back to the last question you asked me before the break, which was Israel's fighting the war on two fronts. Now, what I thought you meant was they're fighting it in the north, which they are, and that's going to intensify and be really rough, trust me, really rough, and in the south. But as you've been saying, and you said it on radio and TV, they're fighting a war, and they're fighting a diplomatic war. And you're right, because the United States just doesn't care. Why hasn't Biden made those speeches? Well, it's really twofold. A, Mark, he's not capable. Now, look, it annoys me just a bit that we're spending so much time talking about his dementia, his mental capacity, because the truth is that he's really a creep. It goes above and beyond any medical difficulties he may be having. He's a bad guy. He's always been a bad guy. He doesn't care. He doesn't care if a Jew gets beat up in Borough Park, Brooklyn. He doesn't care if my daughter gets bullied in London, England. He doesn't care. All he cares about is money. What's the next big deal? How are me and Hunter and Uncle Jimmy going to make a couple of bucks? If it means a couple of Jews, so what? So for me, it comes down to, yes, he has diminished mental capacity, but don't confuse the issue. He's a bad guy, and everybody who works around him, and you've said this, you're right. Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State, he's a traitor. He's inept. every one of them. Kamala Harris, Kirby, Milley, Lloyd Austin. I mean, I've never seen anything like this. This is the worst administration. These guys make Jimmy Carter look like Abe Lincoln. It's embarrassing.
By the way, they put a list of presidents together today on President's Day, and they left Carter off by accident. That just shows you. I mean, they can't even get the little basic stuff right. Let me ask you this, Sid. Sid Rosenberg is a fantastic guy, and he's a very great American patriot, too. Why does all this matter? What's going on in Israel and in our colleges and universities? Why does it matter to the average American?
Oh, because it's going to be here next. That's such a great question. And a lot of Americans shrug it off, not because they're anti-Semites, not because they dislike the Jews. In fact, some of them actually care about the Jewish people. But to them, Mark, this is the Middle East. This has been going on for thousands and thousands of years. And they're right about that, especially about the Palestinians. I mean, when I hear people sympathize with the Palestinians, it makes me laugh. You know the stats. 80% of these Palestinians side with Hamas, not because there's a gun to their head, because they like them. They hate the Jews, but they really believe in this country. Oh, it's all the way over there. Well, now you're starting to see whether it's anti-Semitism at Columbia or NYU or Harvard. It's not just there. The amount of Jews that get beat up on the streets here in New York the last 2 years is up over 400%. So it's coming here. And I'm going to say this. Here in New York, you have to deal with 3 criminal elements, Mark Levin, every day. You've got your regular guys who commit crimes, right? The same guys that are still pushing people in front of subways, mugging people, raping people at 3 o'clock in the morning. Then you've got the illegals. I don't call them migrants. I don't call them asylum seekers. They're illegals, and they're starting to commit some violent acts. And then you've got the third group of criminals, and they're called terrorists. And they are waiting, just waiting. They're going to unleash a terrorist attack in this country that I believe is going to be brutal on the same level as 9/11, and it's going to happen right here again in New York City. Too many of these people, too many of these terrorists have crossed this country illegally in the last 3 years. They're just waiting for the right time. So for those folks, when you ask me, why does it matter here? Because it's coming. Trust me.
I'm going to ask you a question I'm asked all the time, and I have an answer for it, but I'd be curious to know what you want to tell America, Sid Rosenberg. Why do so many Jews vote for Democrats when they're voting for the same candidates as some of the people who want to destroy them?
I just asked your friend and mine, Alan Dershowitz, who was on your TV show just a couple of days ago, that same question today. Because he still does it, you know. He's a guy that has actually defended Donald Trump. He wrote a book that's titled Get Trump. He's the first to say what this Department of Justice has done to Donald Trump is criminal and embarrassing. Yet, he would vote for Joe Biden today. Jewish people get caught up in nonsense. Dershowitz talks about abortion. Dershowitz talks about the right for gay marriage, all those things that are perfectly left up to the states that don't affect Americans' daily lives. When you vote for the president, folks, you got to vote for 2 things. It's really very, very simple. You got to vote to stay safe, which Joe Biden has done a terrible job of, and you have to vote for a guy who's going to add money to whatever money you've got in the bank today, which Joe Biden's Bidenomics has done a terrible job. You show me a guy who has kept us more safe, not just in America, but around the world. You show me a guy who added more to your 401k and your money in the bank than Donald Trump, and I'll vote for that guy. That guy doesn't exist. That's what Jews do. They get caught up in tradition, abortion, gay rights, and all of a sudden, their own people getting destroyed and wiped out in the state of Israel matter less. I say it all the time. The Jews are their own worst enemies. They're my people. I love them. But in many cases, Mark Levin, they're stupid.
Couldn't agree more. Sid Rosenberg, now you know why he's tops. Sid, I want to thank you, my brother. If people want to listen, what do? Live stream all over the country? Is that it?
Yeah. Listen, you can download the app and listen to me at 6 in the morning, and 12 hours later, listen to my dear friend here, the great one, Mark Levin, at 6 at night. Just download the app. It's free, 77 WABC. And, of course, if you're driving around New York City, you can find Sid and Friends in the morning on 770 a.m. And let me just say this again on the way out. I've loved you for years. We had that little tiff for a couple of months. But whether you're Jewish or not, if you love this country, if you love Israel, and I mean this sincerely, there is no better or bigger voice in the country, in the world today than Mark Levin. I am honored to call you a friend, and we're very lucky to have you, whether it's radio or TV, talking to us every day. We need you now, Mark Levin, more than ever.
This is why I love Sid, not because he praises me, but this is a man who's full of passion and intelligence, and now you know why people want to listen to him. Sid, God bless you, my brother, and take care of yourself.
You too. You too. Thank you so much for this. I love you, Mark Levin. We'll talk again.
Love you too, buddy.